So, Nick, are you a fan of cars yourself, or is it more a case of function over form for you?
As I've got older, Katie, I've tended to find myself probably being good to myself. And this is part of what this I call this living creep, where I'm not a massive car enthusiast or anything, but yeah, I've generally tended to buy more expensive cars as I've got older. And I do appreciate them probably more than I would have done in the past. So the cost has gone up as I've gone through, the various different cars that I've owned.
Do you buy new?
No, it's one of the things that I've always kind of steered away. The value of a car falls by about 30% in the first 2 years. It's an astronomical kind of steep drop of a new car. And that's why we would normally suggest that people look at cars that are maybe 2 years old, typically, just to kind of avoid that big kind of drop off.
Yeah. So that's advice you'd give your clients, I imagine. Do they ever come to you and say, "Look, Nick, I'm feeling I'm going to go to the forecourt today and get myself a brand new reg plate." Do you find yourself having to explain to them why it would make a lot more sense to buy one that's 2 or 3 years old?
It's normally too late at that point. What I find with people is that whilst I give them advice around all areas of personal finance, they tend to have found the car or they've got a particular preference. And then it's a case of how do they finance it rather than me trying to advise them. Because like people sometimes they want to buy a brand new car, they just get certain pleasure from it. Maybe they just don't like the idea of someone else having driven a car before. It's just their thing. And then for most of the clients I deal with, they're not buying brand new. They typically can't afford to, and it's a case of trying to source that car at the lowest cost that they can find.
hmm hmm So we're here today to talk about the many ways that smart people lose money on cars. And you actually have a few observations, pointers here for us, which we'll make our way through. But let's start with monthly payments because a lot of people are essentially buying cars on credit. So take me through monthly payments and how they might warp somebody's perspective on when they go to the forecourt.
I think, I mean, I've dealt with car dealerships myself, and look at they're in business to make money, and it obviously favors them if you take finance, particularly from them, of course. And they have a really great kind of marketing, kind of almost like a machine that position things in such a way that you don't really see necessarily the true cost. So they position things and say, it's a certain payment on finance, and you can pay it back over a certain number of months, like 60 months, which sounds okay, but you don't really see the true cost of the vehicle. So I'd be very wary about anyone who's looking to buy a car, whether it's brand new or not, if they are going down the route of finance. And some people are forced to, unfortunately, it's not an option for them to be able to buy the car outright. And there's obviously different types of finance. But that rather than looking at the monthly repayment, they take into account the total cost of the purchase price of the vehicle and then the expected repayment cost. And unfortunately, the cost of finance can be quite significant.
hmm hmm Would you tend to advise people to try to buy a second hand car outright?
Wherever possible, Katie, and we've seen it in situations where I have some clients who they have the money to buy the car, but because we've got into, I suppose, probably bad habits, if truth be told, of taking finance, particularly for cars. I mean, PCP became obviously a common phenomenon. And then in more recent times, I've seen clients who are taking finance at the dealership, sometimes being offered, maybe a discounted rate, but they don't need the finance. And my rule of thumb for my clients is that, never a borrower, lender be. So if you can
Mm.
avoid finance of any description, because even at a relatively low interest rate, and the interest rate is the kicker. I mean, if you said to me, Nick, how do I differentiate different car finance deals that are out there? I'd always position it around what is the actual cost of finance? Is it a 7% loan that you're being offered? Is it more than that? Is it less? They tend to be typically the rates we get offered. And the fact of the matter is that, we all talk about mortgage rates going up, obviously with recent rate rises that we saw last week. They tend to be a lot cheaper. We pay back about sort of 3.5% to 4% on our mortgage, but for a car, we could be paying something close to double that.
Yeah. You bring up a really interesting phenomenon, though, and it's one that a lot of financial advisors and financial planners have said to me where their clients have the money in a savings account but just won't touch it and would prefer to take out credit instead and end up paying more even and even though if they had have just taken their own money and essentially paid themselves back as if they were the bank, it would have cost them a lot less. Why is that? Is it just this fear of not having the security of a savings account?
I think it is, Katie, and again, we're all built very differently, and it could be because of maybe historical reasons. They say that we tend to maybe follow traits of our parents, for example, and then it's a case of feeling comfort by having money in the bank. Now, obviously, we all need to have a certain amount that allows us to sleep at night, just to have on reserve. But that money could also be working for us. And as you said, it might be a case of a bit of balance where, you finance some of the car and use some of your own money and try and, keep that cost down because, it's the monthly repayment that's a problem. I always say to my clients that if you can reduce or avoid direct debits coming out to your account, it's one step towards this notion of kind of financial independence, not feeling that, you're working to repay back loans, for example. And then we get into this conundrum of, then it might be fine to have one loan, let's say a mortgage, then you take out a car loan, that's two, and then you want to do some additional works to your house, that's three. And then it starts to kind of build up. So in isolation, having a car loan is not necessarily an awful thing. If you want to drive a car, if you need to drive a car, and if you can't finance it, there's a certain level of acceptance. But it's like you said, if there's maybe a situation where you could buy it yourself and then rebuild back your savings, you'd be surprised how much people can actually save just in that one scenario alone.
What about the desire to have a brand new car?
Look, it's all about our means. So, some people have the ability. I mean, for example, business owners. I'm a business owner, so I have the benefit of choosing whether I buy the car myself personally or getting my company to finance that. And if you cannot benefit fully from, being able to avoid tax, because obviously there's something called benefit in kind, whereby if my company purchases my vehicle, but I use it for personal use, I have to pay a percentage, and that can be quite expensive, even though it's the company that has actually bought the asset for me as an individual. But the benefit in kind is based on its original market value. So in some instances, it actually doesn't hinder me hugely to buy the car firsthand, like brand new, because I'm not going to benefit personally by buying the car secondhand, because the benefit in kind is actually the same for me personally. The cost will vary slightly, so there'll be a slight difference. But so it kind of almost like lends itself. And that's why, you might see people driving brand new cars and saying, well, crap, so how are these people? And I wouldn't fall for the fact that A, they could be pushing them through their companies, or B, they just might be borrowed to the hill. And we never really want to try and compare ourselves to other people, of course.
Is there a sweet spot of sorts for getting the best possible value on a car? Like, is there a certain amount of years old that it might be, or a particular place, like going outside a dealership, going on the secondary market?
Typically 3 to 5 years. The key thing is don't change your cars too often. People sometimes think, oh yeah, this notion of like I have to change my car every 2 years to keep its value. I'm not hugely convinced of that. Again, this is kind of one of those like almost myths that the car industry kind of builds up on. And there was a bit of a misnomer even a couple of years ago where secondhand cars were actually kind of retaining their value. One of the other things I'd be slightly weary of is badges. There's this kind of, I suppose, thing where, we sometimes buy a car because of its perceived value. For example, like you might really like a BMW. But obviously with the advent of more cars that are coming available for us, you can get really good value for cars that may not necessarily have those big kind of name tags, if you like.
There's a new scheme. It's starting on July 1st. It's an EV scrappage scheme, which allows people who have cars that are 13 years or older to get a grant of up to 8,500 to replace it, to scrap it and to replace it with a new EV. Now, I saw that headline and I was like, free money. And immediately went off and started imagining the car was going. And then I actually broke it down and I did the calcs and I thought it was ridiculous because for me, it was still more than I would ever spend on a car, ever. So I'm curious, what's your take on that? Do you think that represents good value for a certain person?
It could do, Katie, but you're right. I mean, I've heard advertisements on it, so I mean, it is being obviously promoted, and the fact it's coming from the government, you think, okay, this is like obviously something that you could feel is for our benefit. But like that, I think we always have to start with budgeting. And I know it's not the most kind of exciting thing for us to do when we're looking to buy, a car. Um, and obviously, if we are looking to change, we try and find the best. And there is value. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you could potentially save up to 8,500, as you said. But if it means that you are being in a position of forcing yourself to take out finance that doesn't suit your budget, or if you're buying a car that's probably a lot more expensive, and some of the EV vehicles can be hugely expensive, obviously, um, it won't necessarily suit. So the key thing we always say is do your research before you buy. And I know it sounds obvious, but like even just working out like what your spend is. I mean, I've been into dealerships and there's really good like, people that sell cars, and look, I don't want to call them salespeople, but they are selling a product, of course. And they have this real way of just sort of making us kind of forget about things that we would normally, not do, like signing lease agreements. We could spend like, you know, weeks researching the car and then just looking at the lease agreement for like 5 minutes, or not even that. It's just sign the dotted line without necessarily reading the terms and conditions.
So is that something smart people can lose money on, where they just get a little bit caught up with all the finer details and the excitement around the look and feel of the car that they can forget?
They do, Katie, and time is also another issue. I feel that a lot of us, unfortunately, are kind of time poor. So we're looking for convenience, and we could end up spending a lot because of that. If you go into a dealership, you may not necessarily kind of want to go away and do the search, but walking away sometimes can be a really good thing, because obviously then you start to get into this kind of pattern of bargaining and like what you could end up. And some of us just don't like asking for discounts. It makes us feel uncomfortable. And look, I'm not there to say you have to haggle,
Hmm.
but by not making that, rash decision, that impulsive, and cars are emotive as well, because obviously, you look at a car, you like the color of it, you like the feel of it. Um, are you going to fully research every aspect of the vehicle in terms of working out what the insurance will be in advance? Looking at the cost of finance. Unfortunately, in the real world, I find that people sometimes just don't have the time or wherewithal to be able to do that to the same extent that they would if it was another purchase. I mean, it's like, a shopping spree where you're not going to go off and just spend 10,000 euros like willy-nilly, but you could end up paying that in finance just because you haven't really maybe thought things through.
Yeah, because it's 269 a month or something like that.
Exactly.
Um, so, oftentimes when people go to the dealership, there's the trading in of the old car and the buying of the new car. But I know you're a believer that these two particular deals should be done independently of one another, because if they get enmeshed, that can get a little bit tricky. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so what happens, Katie, is that you go into a dealership and obviously you find a car that you like and you're drawn to. And then what you find is that instead of being focused on the actual price of the car, you're then talking to the dealer about the finance aspect. And then you're talking potentially about, looking at the options of doing that. And you forget that they are separate decisions. You need to try and identify like how much you're going to pay for the car and then how you're going to finance it, not put the two in tandem. Because what happens then is that you might feel that you're getting a deal on one and then lose out massively on the other side. The dealer will have dealt with so many people and they're well versed in being able to say, okay, well, we'll give you €1,000 off the cost of the car. We all get excited. we sign up to an expensive, car finance deal, which we could have sourced maybe a lot cheaper elsewhere, maybe using some of our own money. And we ended up spending 5 to 10 grand more. So what I say to people is, go in with a price in mind. Do your budget before you go in and
Mm.
work out how you're going to finance the car. Having maybe spoken to your own bank, for example, looking at potentially PCP options. And PCP sounds great, by the way. This is where, obviously you get a car, you generally tend to use it for typically 4 years, and then you kind of upgrade. And it feels like, you're kind of driving these really nice cars, but they're never really yours. And then obviously you've typically got to find this balloon payment to get out of these deals. And then the cars depreciate more perhaps than is envisaged. And you're in this kind of never-ending cycle of just having debt all the time.
Mm.
So I'd watch out for inducements. I have some clients who they even get 0% finance deals, which sounds brilliant. You say, what's that? Fantastic. But there's still a payment coming out your bank account every month. So it's not like for nothing. It's like an opportunity cost. If you buy a car that's on 0% finance, and they will say, well, yeah, I take the money and I can do something else with it. But then you find the money's just sitting in their bank account doing nothing. So they're not really benefiting. Just makes them feel a bit better that they got a 0% deal. So you've got to be kind of careful. And as I said, you've really got to read the terms and conditions and work out, like, is that the best car for you? I wouldn't buy a car based on getting a cheaper finance. I'd buy a car based on other criteria, like, is it reliable? Can I tax it and insure it relatively inexpensively? Can I afford the vehicle? I mean, that's obviously a big part of it.
Yes.
And do I recognize maybe what I'm going to do next time? Most of the clients I deal with, Katie, like if they're in a finance situation, I say to them, look, can we sort of maybe put a savings plan in place, working away in the background, that the next time round, you're not going to be in the same position to have to go and finance.
Yeah, yeah. They're great points. I mean, they're obvious, but a lot of people do forget to just go off into the basics of like how much would this cost to be insured, to be taxed? What's the depreciation like in this vehicle, in particular with EVs at the moment? Just those simple things to understand what it would cost day to day, week to week to just run the car.
I know some of the EVs now, they can, take you as far as like 500 kilometers or even more. But I have this worry, and it's probably again this kind of what I call anchor bias from a previous, I suppose legacy issue of running out of petrol back in the day. I know it's not quite the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're all very different. And as I said, it's about just kind of saying to yourself, okay, this might suit my needs now, but is it going to suit it in the future? Like what am I doing? Because I mean, cars, okay, they can be traded easily, but like you really want to buy something that you feel that you're going to get the value from, as in, okay, they're never a really good investment. And again, I ask my clients, like, why are you buying it? Like, because it's not an investment. It's the opposite of that. Obviously, realizing that you're going to lose money on a car. It's almost certain. And
Yes.
unfortunately, that's just the nature of the way cars are. Um, I'm not anti-EV, and obviously you mentioned the scrappage scheme, but you just need to work out your financial position before going in, because we do
Yes.
get caught up in emotion. We're emotional creatures, and that's just a part of life.
That's it. And how do you master your emotions when you're in the dealership? Like, how do you negotiate well?
Sometimes bringing someone with you, obviously if you're fortunate enough to have a partner that may be a bit more versed, for example, sometimes a friend. Maybe again, doing your research is helpful. I mean, we all talk about AI and how helpful it can be, really powerful in terms of like, getting information to hand about cars and, working out what your options are. I had to buy a car for my son actually last year. He's 21. And, look, he wanted a kind of a more of a flashy vehicle, and I wasn't for changing his mind. But I was able to steer him, away from some of the dealers that were kind of trying to push him into sort of something that was really kind of, you know, with, gold faster stripes and that sort of thing. And it's just, maybe able to sound it off with someone else. And that's why making that kind of impulse decision is always a bad thing. But the dealers are there to try and do that. They Obviously, look, they mostly work on commission, and that's not to be disingenuous to them. It's just the nature of the industry. So realizing and walking away and saying to yourself, okay, okay, if that car, because they say that the car might be gone, and
Hmm.
there's all these reasons why you have to act quickly and so on and so forth. But there's lots of cars available at the moment, and there's no shortage.
Do you know what always comes up as well when I'm chatting to people like yourself, but also wealth managers? They often talk about how their truly wealthy clients drive 10-year-old cars. Have you encountered that? Have you seen that type of person who has plenty of money but just keeps a very low key, modest lifestyle?
I have, Katie, yeah, absolutely. And part of that is because, as I've said earlier, cars are really bad investments. And
Hmm.
obviously, part of being wealthy is retaining the money that you have and knowing that, a car, whether it's worth 10,000 or 50,000, ultimately does the same job for us. Like it gets us from A to B. Now, okay, we all have different desires, and some people have, as you sort of asked me earlier, maybe a preference for a nicer car. I've afforded myself the luxury in certain years, but many years I've driven just go around cars just because I didn't have the resource at the time. But I have many clients who drive very inexpensive cars, and more so is that there's always this notion of like running the car into the ground. I hear,
Hmm.
some people talk about that. Not always convinced it's the best thing, because obviously as a car gets older, it needs a lot more repair, and again goes back to that sort of sweet spot, where if you have a car that's typically over 10 years old, you find that there's a lot more issues and it may become more problematic. In terms of the finance, it's just working out what the best option is for you, and realizing that there are, and people sometimes always think that they're like tied into these lease agreements, and they're generally not. A lot of people I've spoken to who are on quite expensive, finance deals, there's no cost of penalty in the vast majority of cases, where you can basically replace that or overpay it. It's like anything. I say to someone, if you've got car finance, see it as an opportunity to save into a brilliant investment by repaying it back quicker.
Interesting. Finally, and ultimately, Nick, how much car can one afford? This is a question that comes up time and time again, and there's plenty of formulas even that you can find around the internet for this. Do you have a take in it? Like, let's take a person on an average salary of €50,000 a year. Would you care to put a figure beside that of how much they should be spending on their car?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, look, in my opinion, and it is just an opinion because we all have different views, but I would say somewhere in a region of maybe 50% of 1 year's salary. So typically for someone on 50,000 a year, a car in the region of about 25,000, I think would be reasonable. Now,
Okay.
obviously, again, it's not a judgment on those that really like great cars, and it's not a judgment on those that can spend a lot less and be equally as happy. But obviously, and that's, sorry, the starting value of the vehicle, in terms of like understanding its depreciation, because that's a big factor. I mean, that is the massive hidden cost. And
Yeah.
realizing that, every year you're losing at least 10% of its value. And obviously then there's the cost of running the car, which we all forget about. I mean, cars are not cheap. Even buying that sort of first car for my son, you're looking at typically kind of 10,000 plus
Yes.
anything that's kind of roadworthy, that way.
Yes. Yes. Nick, that was super. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Katie. It's an absolute pleasure.